I want to greet all of you. Good evening. I will try and move away from this thing a little bit once in a while because I am short. Am I not short? So I can begin by advantages of being short. One of them is that when you are called to an occasion like this to speak to senior legal minds, people like Justice Agrim Chelule, who tells me that he was admitted to the bar before I was born. You know, you are bound to grow cold feet. But now the advantage of being short is that shortness is a sign of stability. Even if you grow cold feet, you are stable because you are short. And the more interesting thing about height is that tunasema urefu ni ya Mungu, si ndio? Unene ni individual effort, lakini urefu ni ya Mungu. You see, now I have to be assisted because I am vertically disadvantaged. But it also gives me stability. So I would want to thank the organizers very much, beginning with the patron, the chairman, the board of the Western Jurists, and all of you for giving me this humbling opportunity to speak before eminent personalities on a matter that I hold dear to my heart. And picking on a joke that was said recently and blown out of proportion, one eminent personality in the country joked about many things that fight for the chance to kill Kenyans. You heard the joke. So today I would like to say that I know there are many things that are fighting for your attention at this moment, including World Cup and many other things that Dr. Lutalala has alluded to by saying that at this hour there are certain things that some of us would like to do rather than being here to listen to this gentleman. But I want to thank you and to promise you that I will not take much of your time this evening. So I would like to share my thoughts about the importance of political participation in economic development, lessons for Western Kenya. And I looked at the way this dinner is arranged, and I saw that annual dinner and dance is written in capital and bold. Then the importance of political participation and economic development is written in smaller font. So what does that mean? We are here for the dinner and dance. So who am I to stand in between you and the dinner and dance? So I'll take the shortest time to ensure that I deliver my brief here, and I'll be out of here. What is politics? Personally, I believe that politics has been underdefined because politics permeates all spheres of our life. And I simply would like to define politics as the means by which power is obtained, and therefore the means by which resources are distributed. So anywhere where there is power, there is politics. Be it family, be it church, in any kind of organization, where there is power, there is politics. So politics is much more important than we may want to think. And I think the speakers who have been here before, including the former CS and the presidential advisor, have alluded to that. She has just told us about the Kakamega airstrip, and she said it is the benefit of being in government. So since I'm talking to lawyers, I know I would want to associate myself with the Black's Law Dictionary, which defines politics as the science of government, the art of and practice of administering public affairs. But I still find that definition being restrictive because politics permeates beyond just the art of public governance. It actually cuts across all the decisions that affect us in our spheres of life. And therefore, politics is very important and is an area that we may want as a community to participate in actively. And now we are looking at politics, not only politics as it were, but we want to look at it from the prism of its importance to our development, the nexus between politics and development. And I dare say at this point that development, for those who know, because they say if you know you, so they say if you know you know. For those who know politics, or development for that matter, is actually as a result of closeness to power. Is a result of closeness to power. So most of us would think that development will come because of the institutions that we have, because of the processes that we undertake. Of course, we are on that journey, but it is more important to underscore that politics actually comes as development comes as a result of having proximity to power. I know most of us here are Christians, and before I get deeper into this discussion, I would definitely want to say that I want to talk tribe, and I will talk tribe unapologetically. I will talk tribe unapologetically. Do I have supporters here? Tribe is a divine appointment by God. Tribe is a divine appointment by God. It is not something that you are assigned by men. It is something that you are given by God. God, in his own infinite wisdom, put us into tribes. If you look at the Bible in the book of Acts, you will see this in Acts chapter 17, verse 16, which says that from one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. So we are a result of God's own geographical and linguistic design. And that is why, for every reason, to be here today and talk about our issues as Western, people from Western, is a matter that we should take close to our heart, and is actually a divine assignment. So you should not be apologetic for being a Luya. And I stand here to talk about tribe and say, at any given opportunity, I would associate myself with my tribe, with no apologies, with no reservations, because if you are living in a tribal society, what is the rational thing to do? If you are living in a tribal society, you know I'm talking to learned friends. Myself, I'm an aspiring, I can only say maybe I'm schooled. I'm not learned, but I'm schooled. Until I obtain my law degree, then I will be learned. Because accountants, we don't call ourselves learned friend. We are just schooled. But lawyers are learned people. Now, as learned people, we must know that besides all the other sciences that we will engage in, law included, there is a writer who once said that politics infects all other sciences, and therefore there is no other science, or there is no science that is immune to infection by politics. You would be as learned as you are, but politics will find you right from your practice. It will find you right in your office. It will either advantage you or disadvantage you. And if that is the case, why don't we take the front seat in politics? The question being, so far as people from Western, how have we fared in terms of development, and how has that been informed by our political disposition and participation in politics? I've said we are living in a tribal society, and therefore, even if you choose not to identify yourself by your tribe, you will be identified by your tribe. You know, I remember when I was working, every time I got an opportunity to work, I would get there and people would try to assign my name to where I come from. You know, they easily can connect. And I realized that even if I don't say where I come from, there are people who will actually investigate and try to find out which tribe you are from. Why is it so important to them? Because tribe informs a lot that what happens at workplace and a lot that happens in the decisions in the boardrooms where we come from. So it is better as rational beings that we take cognizance of the fact that tribe is very important. And for all of us who are here, being Westerners, personally I come from Amalemba in Kakamega. That is where I'm born and brought up. But originally from Mbihi in Mbale in Maragoli. And I'm uncled in Munyore. See, I am a balanced Luya. Nyarakullo marunyore, narakumoro maru logori, khandi nyarakurabashila ruisuka. Nzina menyambesuka. So I am a balanced Luya for that matter, and proud one at that. And I would want to say that if we took our position in politics carefully, then a bit of the statistics that I'm going to share with you might have been different. But they say it is better late than never. We can change that and change that now. I was saying I'm going to use a bit of analogy from the Bible. Proximity to power brings development. And I would want to give an example. I like using the example of Lazarus in the Bible. We know the story of Lazarus. Lazarus was raised not because he was the only man who had died at that point in time. There were other people who had died. But why was he raised? Because he was a friend of Jesus. So proximity to power is important. And that is biblical. If you go to the book of Luke, read about the story of Mary and Martha. Those of you who have read the Bible, you will see that Mary invited Jesus to their home. And then Martha simply sat at the feet of Jesus. Are we familiar with this story? Martha simply sat at the feet of Jesus. And Mary was busy with other business around there. And Martha went to complain to Jesus and said, Mary went to complain to Jesus and said, I'm doing a lot of chores in the house, but Martha is just sitting at your feet. What did Jesus say? Thank you. Jesus said, she has chosen the right thing to do. What does that tell you? Sit at the feet of power. Everything else will follow. So we are here to discuss about how we are going to sit at the seat of power. And I dare add, we talk about empowerment. Is there any better empowerment than attaining power itself? Is there a better empowerment than attaining power itself? So as Westerners, we want to go for power. And probably we don't know how good power is because we have never been in power. How will we know and we have not been there? And that is why probably we do not take it as seriously as we should. If you look at the voter turnout in Western Province, it tells you, or the former Western Province and the whole of Western region, it tells you that these people have not tested power. And therefore they do not know what power portends. They don't know the trappings of power. If you are close to power, even if you died, you will be raised 4 days later. And your death will be downgraded to sleep. Jesus said, he is sleeping. So, so if you're close to power, your death will be downgraded to sleep. So we want to move close to power. But that has not been the story of the people of Western Kenya. I want to just take you through a bit of statistics. I said I don't want to take a lot of your time. A bit of statistics, and we ask ourselves, how do we turn the equation for the people from Western Kenya? We know very well that we have strength as the Western people. And in terms of numbers, and as an accountant, I like numbers because numbers don't lie. We are the second most populous tribe in the country, aren't we? We are. But if you look at the way resources have been distributed in this country, we have been seriously disadvantaged. To the extent that I think by the time I was either in high school or clearing high school, I had Luyas being called cooks and watchmen. How can the second most populous tribe in the country be relegated to cooks and watchmen? There must be something so unstrategic about how we do our politics. Recently, I was reading on Twitter and I saw Professor Makau Mutua put a question there, and he was saying that Somalis are the most politically and economically strategic group, and yet Luyas are the least politically and economically strategic. And he posed a question there and said, discuss. And I think there must be something that informs that question, because our numbers and the opportunities we access have a glaring mismatch. And we must crack this, not only for ourselves, but for our generations. We are the second most populous tribe, not only countrywide, but also in Nairobi. We are the second most populous in Nairobi. Going by the voter register of 2022, out of the 2.2 million registered voters in Nairobi, Luyas form 23%, following only Kikuyus who form 29%. Look at the opportunities that we reach to. Now we have only 3 elected members of parliament. Initially we had 2. We have improved by 1. I think that is Beatrice Elachi. Now we are 3. And yet the Kikuyus who we follow have 7 members of parliament out of 17. We only have 3. Even Luos beat us, they have 4. Now that tells us that we are seriously unstrategic. because our numbers don't move the same direction with our opportunities. That is what makes this point very important. And everywhere on formal platforms, we will be advised, which is okay, to shun tribalism. But now, because I'm talking to Westerners here, and I know if I run the risk of being taken to court, the employer of the judge is here. The judge is here. So I think I enjoy a bit of immunity at this podium today. So I dare say we must think first in our tribe. And most of us suffered in school because of this, because we used to think in Luya, and then by the time you translate in Swahili or English, the papers are being collected, you know. So actually, we might not have failed because we did not know. We were still in the process of translating our thought from mother tongue to this colonial language. And if you take away the colonial language, who are we? We are Luyas. If you take away the colonial language, who are we? We are simply Luyas. So let nobody cheat us. Charles Darwin, in the theory of evolution, says that the species that will survive is not the strongest, but the most adaptable. So for us in a tribal society like ours, we must adapt. We must think tribe and project inclusivity. I hope you heard me. We must think and project, because that is the name of the game. In Nairobi, I was giving you statistics about Nairobi. In Nairobi, out of the 85, first of all, out of the MPs that we have, I've told you we have 3 MPs, none of them is from a Luya-led party. When I talk about Luya-led party, you know. We have our ANC, we have our Ford Kenya, we have our DAP. None of them is from a Luya-led. It gets even worse if you look at the 85 MCAs that we have in Nairobi. None of political parties that are formed in or headed by Luyas, or we pride in as our Luya people, none of them has a single seat in the Nairobi County Assembly. None. The closest we get to is ODM. You get the point? So where are we with the 23% of Luyas in Nairobi? Actually, we command the numbers in over 7 constituencies. And we can actually garner for 10 constituencies in Nairobi. But we only manage 3. And in fact, even the third one, you know, you would understand it's something that we got through the arrangement that was there. We might not have made it. What has given us this level of disadvantage? Now, if we look at other statistics beyond what I have given you about Nairobi, we have the numbers, we have the geographical dispersion, we are well educated, liberal and democratic. We have brilliant minds, but our participation in politics has not been projected to the level that it is supposed to be. I looked at the data from World Bank about extreme poverty prevalence in Kenya. And it tells a very sad story that Kenya itself, the poverty index, is at 8.6, poverty index. Kakamega is at 6.9, meaning we are doing badly than the national average. It gets even worse. If you go to Vihiga, the poverty index is at 8.2. Still, we are doing badly than the national poverty index. Now Busia is even worse at an index of 26.8. So you get the level of prevalence of poverty. And this is directly associated with our political participation. Remember the definition of politics. It is the means by which power is obtained and resources distributed. So if you have this level of prevalence of poverty, then it means that at the end of the day, our politics is not yielding fruit. I also looked at prevalence of food poverty among children. And remember, the World Bank says that food poverty among children retards their growth and actually causes them not to be able to perform in terms of education. And therefore, it creates a vicious cycle of poverty. And the food poverty prevalence among children, again, Western leads. Kenya being at an average of 32, Kakamega is at 33, Vihiga is at 36, Busia is at 59, Bungoma at 32, Trans Nzoia is at 33. Go to Central. Central, they are below the national average in terms of food poverty. They are below the national average. If you go to Kiambu, it's 23.5 against a national of 32. Muranga is 27, and that tells us that they are doing better. And your guess is as good as mine. Why are they doing better? They have been close to power, or actually they have been in the seat of power. Total dependency ratio. This is where it gets even worse. Total dependency ratio, it means what I hear them refer to Alutalala saying in the first Western Jurists Forum, the mbeho. You know that dependency? You know, it is said Luhyas love food. And I usually ask, who doesn't love food? Did you come across a human being who doesn't love food, or at least need food? And why do they say Luhyas love food? Because we have suffered scarcity. We have what we call scarcity mentality. And do you know the effect of scarcity mentality? We have just been taking our dinner here very orderly, because probably none of us here still suffers from scarcity mentality. But if you go to our villages and place food where you placed it today, and say this table will go before this table, what will happen? You will see people gravitating towards the food. And that is simply scarcity mentality. Myself, I'm a farmer, and I farm pigs. And it is said that there's a system of feeding pigs where you put the food in the ad lib feeder so that pigs don't fight for food. They know that there's food here every time. If I knock, the food will drop down and I will eat. But if you use the old way of feeding, you take food there at lunchtime, those animals will literally fight for that food. Even if it will be much, they will all fight, and then the food will remain. But why do they fight? Because you think itaisha kabla nikule. And that is what our people from Western have suffered until tumeambiwa ya kwamba sisi tunapenda chakula. We should rise up and change this narrative. The only way we can change this narrative is to move closer to power, or at least attain power itself. Poverty impairs personal and investment decision making. We all know that is true. Poverty seriously impairs personal and investment decision making, because when you are poor, you are seriously compromised. I dare say poverty stinks. Is that too brutal? It is true. Poverty stinks. And you realize that when you are poor, you are actually a compromised human being. By the way, do you know a lot of the people you interact with who are poor are not who you think they are? They are actually not who you think they. Si unasikiaga siku hizi wanasema pesa kidogo tu amefanya nini? Pesa kidogo tu amejiona, pesa kidogo tu amefanya hivi. Why? Because a lot of us live in the pretense that is poverty. We don't do what we don't do, not because we don't want to do, but because we cannot afford. So if you want to know who a man is, or who a person is, give them money, and probably add them a little bit of power. So some of us will live our full lifetime without us ever knowing the potential that we had, because we have lived in poverty. We simply do what we can afford, and we simply don't do what we cannot afford. And therefore, poverty compromises your thinking. Because every time you want to think, you ask yourself, do I afford? Can I afford? And you are intimidated in the process. And you realize that we cannot achieve our human potential if we live in that kind of environment. Some statistics I was looking at in one of the reports by the NCIC, National Commission on Integration and Cohesion, about opportunities in the civil service. And it will surprise you that Luhyas, despite being the second most populous, we are disadvantaged. And if you look at the ranking, we have advantaged tribes in the civil service. Advantaged tribes meaning that tribes whose percentage in the civil service is higher than their national percentage in terms of population. And we have advantaged tribes being Kikuyus, population of 17%, civil service 22%, Kalenjin population of 13%, civil service 16%, Meru population of 4%, civil service 5.9%. Those are among the tribes which are advantaged. Come to the disadvantaged tribes. Luhyas are ranked together with Mijikenda. We are ranked with Turkana. We have a national population of 14%, yet the positions we have in civil service is 11%. So we have a 3 percentage point deficit or underprivilege in terms of resources in the civil service. This is a report by the National Commission on Integration and Cohesion. So all this speaks about our political participation. And that is why I dare stand here today to tell you we need to look at politics more keenly. In fact, there's a writer who said politics should be the part-time job of every other person or citizen who dares think about their nationhood and the good of the people. So all of us here, I like hearing people say, mimi si mwanasiasa. Si watu wengi sana wanapenda kupeana disclaimer, mimi si mwanasiasa. But the late President Moi did not tell us masomo mbaya, maisha mbaya. What did he say? Siasa mbaya, maisha. So life, your quality of life actually correlates to your standard of participation in politics, whether you know it or not. There are those who benefit from politics without knowing, but there are those who are very deliberate about it. So I would want us to be very deliberate about it. Some other statistics that I got from the Public Service Commission, and they are statistics that will really shock you. Kikuyus accounted for 27% of Kenya's 66 envoys, with Kalenjins taking 14% as of June 2022. On CEOs of parastatals, Kikuyus took 20% of the positions, followed by Kalenjins at 19%, Luos at 14%, Luyas at 10%. This is informed by what? Politics. The PSC reported that Kikuyus and Kalenjins account for 29% and 11% of the 417 top jobs in government, including directors, principal secretaries, respectively. And when you come to education, out of the 32 public universities that we have in Kenya, only 2 of them are in Western Kenya. Have you thought about that? Out of 32. Do you know where the others are? 10 of them are in Mount Kenya region. For your information, Kenyatta University, where I did my undergraduate, and JKUAT, where I'm doing my PhD, they're in Central. Serio? So Central have 10 universities. Personally, I was born and brought up in Kakamega town. Actually, if the president of LSK would have been here, he was just a few years ahead of me in school. That is Theuri. We went together in the same school. Now, Kakamega was a very dull town until Masinde Muliro was given a charter. And the economy of Kakamega seriously improved. Those of us who dwell there or have been there know that. Is that the case? Now you can imagine if we had 5 of those or 10 of those. Our economic empowerment will be totally different. And that is where now we say, as Luyas, thus far, politically, we have not mined the capital that would give us the development that we need. Politics gives us closeness and proximity to power that determines how resources are distributed. So I would want us as Western jurists, as we get out of here, to make a very deliberate decision that we want to actively participate in politics. But as I finalize, I want us to ask ourselves a few questions. Why is it that we have been politically unstrategic or as ineffective as we have been? And there are quite a number of things that have been said about Luyas, some of which I would want to say. I know we don't like to say them, or we may not want to hear them, but it's the truth anyway. And one interesting thing about Luyas, even before I go to that, if you meet Luyas speaking about Luyas, yani mborambu nonyora baluya baloma mangana about baluya, what you would hear them say most of the time is what? Is what? Ukikaa tu na Waluya wawili watatu utasikia wanasema, unajua ubaya ya Waluya? Sasa, have you ever sat with them and hear them say, unajua uzuri ya Waluya? How many times have you heard that? So that tells us that already our orientation is negative. We are self-hating. We have started on a weak pedestal because we grow up knowing Waluya wako na uba. Wewe umewahi sikia mtu akwambia uzuri ya Waluya? Ni ngumu sana. Kitambo upate mtu amekwambia uzuri ya Waluya, that person is very intentional, deliberate, and is about to make change. But most of us will be in the group that says, unajua Waluya hawapendanangi, na hata yeye pia hapendi Waluya. Now you wonder who is going to cure us from this. Chairman hapa ametuambia charity begins at home. Those of you who travel by air, like Commissioner amesema hapa, when wale air hostess wanapeana ile the emergency procedures, what do they usually tell you at the end? They say jiokoe kabla ya kuokoa mwingi. So that is the gist of the matter. Now you cannot love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. Isn't that the Bible? What does the Bible say? Love your neighbor as much as you. Now, if you don't love yourself, can you love your neighbor? So when you come to politics, I told you that development is actually a byproduct of association or close association with power. Development is a byproduct. You may think I'm putting it in the inverse, but it's actually the case. You actually get development because those that be in power sat down, looked at their self-preservation, looked at how they will further their causes, and by extension, development came your way. So most of the time, development, even if we look at devolution, the development that has come through devolution is not simply because of the structures that we have, but it's because resources were pushed closer to the people. And now, we have a lot of positions kule chini. Ukienda kwa county, kuna chief officer, kuna CEC, kuna nini. When those people sit and enjoy the good perks and the ambience of their offices, we get a byproduct called development. So you better understand. They will tell you that the core thing we have sat here to do is to discuss development. But me, I dare tell you the other way around, that development is actually a byproduct of close association to power. So if we want to develop, let us look for power. Development, tutaongezewa. Kwa Biblia walisema tafuteni nini kwanza ufalme wa Mungu, si ndio? Na hii ingine tutaongezewa. So I dare tell you, because all of you here are learned, educated people, people who are somewhere in life. You know, there's what we call textbook knowledge and there is kwa ground, si ndio? Tukiwa shule tulikuwa tunaambiwa someni vijana, muongeze pia bidii. Mwisho wa kusoma, mutapata kazi nzuri. But you have seen the CS here complaining about distribution of positions. But that tells you clearly that distribution of positions at the national level and through all the other structures is political. If it is political, therefore it means meritocracy comes secondary. Meritocracy is secondary. So for us, kwa textbook ni sawa. Watoto wetu shuleni tuwaambie so. Lakini sisi hapa kwa ground, let us look for power. And our participation in politics does not necessarily mean vying for a political position. There are many ways that we can participate in politics. One of them being having what we call guided democracy. Guided democracy is our community should sit down and we tell each other who is going for which position, at what time, for what reason, and for what benefit to the community. So that is how we do our guided democracy. So if we are able to do that and look at the other ills that lawyers have had, one of them being lawyers are not protective. They will let their own to suffer and roast at the national level just like that. But other tribes will rally behind their own. Is that true? And I will ask you very difficult questions. Like, for example, now we have seen the DCI releasing people, si ndio? Si tumeona wakiwachilia kesi. Ngapi ya Waluya imewachiliwa? Mimi nauliza ni ngapi ya Waluya imewachili? Si nimesema niko hapa na justices watanitetea kama nimekujiwa. Nauliza I have seen the cases that have been dropped and I have looked at them. And I want to tell you, whether you like it or not, read the background. Soma pale nyuma, si ndio? Pale nyuma, these things are political. So as we read, we also want to see Waluya wetu pia wakiwachili. Sisi tumeona tu Waluke 67 years, and then we have even seen Jirongo's case revived, and we have seen others. But kwengine tunaona now there is no evidence. We want to access power so that we can also advantage our community. This is a topic I would want to speak and speak, because also I'm also a budding politician. But also, before I finish, there is something about our community that I find very difficult. You know, I contested in the last election. I vied for the position of MP in Lurambi constituency in Kakamega. And by the grace of God, I came second out of 6. So that means that I'm somewhere. Sindio? Siniko mahali. But let me tell you, Luyas are burdensome. Let me commit the sin myself now and talk bad about Luyas. Luyas are, do you know when I said I'm vying, even my most distant relatives and people I went to school with who don't vote in Lurambi, waliniletea school fees, wakaniletea fee structure, wakaniletea hospital bills, people who have nothing to do with the Lurambi constituency. Yani kwa vile wamesikia tu nimesimama, they came trooping. So now you wonder, who told Luyas when somebody is going for political power, it means that kuna pesa ameokota ma? So it makes this a vicious cycle. Ni vigumu sana hata kwa vijana wenzangu kujaribu kusimama kwa hii viti ya MP and others because it is seriously burdensome. I will tell you, in the middle of the ocean, I asked myself, what did I get myself into? Because it was very difficult. In the morning ukiamka, wako pale, kuna kakitu nimeweka hapo nje ya nyumba naangalia kwa bedroom. They are there before I even wake up myself. They are taking tea. Na unajua wamefika pale wanakuambia, sasa unajua nimeamka nyumbani na sasa sikuwa na chai. Na si wewe ni mheshimiwa wetu na si nimekuja. You find a sense of entitlement. They have come and it's your responsibility anyway. But you see, when I was doing that, very naively, I thought that I would see my relatives coming up to support me. I would see these former schoolmates coming up to support me. But in the converse, these people were part of the people who are lining up to ensure that you are properly milked. Wanasema sasa ziko. Na wengi wao walikuwa wanasema, hey, huyu ameingia hapa, ataisha. Huyu ataisha. Now you're wondering, I'm going to look for something that can bring advantage to our community because your profession can advantage your family. But it's very difficult for your profession to advantage your community. But politics can advantage the community. One friend of mine who we contested with, he actually contested for an MCA position. After that, we were sitting, tukipiga story ile ya kupanguza jasho, si ndio? Na kufuta machozi. And he told me, do you know what, Tim, kama unataka kujua watu wenye wanakupenda, hata usipeleke ati matanga ama nini, simama kura. Wachana na mambo ya matanga. And you know, when he told that, it hit me hard because I lost my dad in 2020, and may God rest his soul in peace. And I had a group of friends who contributed. Actually, they contributed upwards of 700,000. Friends, people I do business with and so on. When I send the same friends a message telling them I'm contesting, I can tell you here and now, I received less than 100,000 shillings and from a few people. So I was asking myself, if somebody loves you, what would they contribute in? For somebody like me who believes life is for the living, I would rather you contribute for my political contest because it has good things coming. But if you contribute for a funeral, what benefit is a funeral going to give me anyway? After I bury the dead, what benefit? There's no benefit in the funeral for me. Whether I bury my father in high dignity or low dignity, life moving forward will be facing me with serious questions about quality of life and the needs in life. Now you wonder why all these people are able to contribute to a funeral, but they cannot contribute to bring power closer home. We must review the way we look at politics. And all these statistics I've given you, you will see the Kikuyus, the Kalejins have been advantaged in many ways. What is the bottom line? They have had power. So let us go for power. And I finish by saying that they say things don't have energy of their own. Things are made to work. It is for us to stand up, play our role, be politically active, either directly or indirectly, and decide from now on that we will honor our divine appointment of being lawyers. And we will now caucus around each other and support each other so that we can bring the change that we so need in our community. I know I have exceeded my time by a few minutes, but I want to thank you very much and say there is a lot more statistics. If you just go on the website and look at the reports by the Public Service Commission, on even in tertiary institutions, you will see the reports about how many lawyers, Kikuyus are there, go to institutions, and just look at how resources in this country are devolving versus where us and our people and our numbers are. We must come to a point where we say that we will support one of our own, regardless of their height, regardless of their color, regardless of how good they are. Our weaknesses tutaongelea nyuma ya tent. Sindio? Let us support one of us and say in our community, like others do, it is the first among equals. Waluya sasa wakisikia mtu wamesimama wanaanza huyo anatoka kwa nyumba ya nani, babu yake alizikwa wapi. And this is a Luya. Now they go asking serious questions. Amesoma nini huyo mtu? Amesoma nini? And you see, for somebody to marshal the resources to vie for a position, it's not a joke. Now this fellow has presented himself and you are now beginning to audit. And you are going to vote for an Luya who even has nothing of the qualities and credentials you are demanding from your own Luya. May God help us. God bless you.